Welcome to episode 18 of the Backseat Fighter podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Binns, and I'm incredibly grateful to be doing this episode today. Usually I'm just excited, but if you saw the watch along, you maybe saw a little bit of this.
You probably, bro.
Oh! Moicano just dropped Islam Makhachev. Or you saw a little bit of this.
Yo, Jamal Hill's a dog.
Oh! Save him from himself, Rev. Oh! How is he up? But the reason that I bring that up is because it was a really successful video. It got a lot of support, a lot of views, and I'm just really, really happy with how it's done and the response I've gotten from it. So I just wanted to say thank you. And it also helped me reach a huge milestone and a big milestone for this community, for our space, with all of you guys watching, which is that we hit 50 subscribers. We're now up to 54, which is incredible. And I'm just happy to be growing this space. And for the people who have subscribed, I've got a nice giveaway coming. I'm not going to reveal quite what it is. It might have to do something with some clothing, but I'm going to sort that out in the next couple of weeks. It's been in my mind for a while, and I think 50 subscribers is a good milestone to do it for. So look out for that. I'm very, very excited about that. And if you want to be entered into that giveaway, you are going to have to be subscribed to the channel. So please subscribe. At about only 94% of the people watching this content at the moment are subscribed. So yeah, you know what? Just subscribe and let's get straight into the episode today. So I know that I did the watch along. You've seen my reactions to the fights whilst they were on, but I want to talk about UFC 311 a little bit more, about, you know, how the fights went, what's next for the fighters, and of course, a little bit of some controversy, in my opinion at least, about some responses I got even to my reactions during the fights. So let's get into that. I'm going to have to address some comments here. Again, thank you for the subscribers. Thank you for 54 subscribers. Thank you for the community. Let's keep building it. But I do have to address some comments. And to be fair, it was pretty reasonable debate. So if I go over to my watch along video here and I scroll down into the comments, I see a comment from EB North from 3 days ago. It says, Islam slips and the crowd goes wild with a laughing face. So obviously, I thought Islam got knocked down by Renato. This was my reaction.
You probably, bro.
Oh! Renato Moicano just dropped Islam Makhachev. Okay. So now that we've established it, that was my reaction. So I obviously thought he got knocked down by Renato in that moment. And then I said, I'll feature his comment in this video. EB North, your comments on the screen. Hope you're watching. He said, I should probably clarify, it seems to be technically an off-balance stumble as opposed to a slip. Either way, not a knockdown. Looking forward to the next step. Thank you for looking forward to the next step. Appreciate you being here. I got another comment on that video, BenJack6664 saying slipped, bro. And I have to address this now. It's time to address this. People thinking that I just saw that Islam slipped and decided that it was a knockdown for, I guess, to make some more hype. No, I genuinely thought he got knocked down in the moment. I didn't realize till after the fight, or say they said it on commentary that it was a slip. But at the same time, I do think now it's being rebranded too much as just a slip. Now, did Renato Moicano land a headshot with the left hook on Islam Makhachev that stunned Islam, sent him to the ground? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. So don't get me wrong, don't get me twisted on that. What I am saying is, Renato, in that kind of scuffled exchange with Islam Makhachev in that moment, he does land, I think it's either a right hook. It's a right hook, I believe, to the right armpit of Islam Makhachev, which kind of knocks him off balance. Islam's left foot ends up stepping forward and I think goes on top of Renato Moicano's foot, which is why he loses balance. So Renato technically is the reason that he lost balance, but not because he dropped him in the traditional sense. He kind of just landed a shot to his arm. And if you know anything about training, you know that if you can control somebody's arms, you realistically can control a lot of their balance and a lot of their movement. That's why you see in Muay Thai, a lot of people grab the cuff of the other person's glove, move them around before body kicking them. It's the same principle, right? If you can actually put momentum and movement into somebody's arms, if they find it harder to obviously stand up and stay on balance. So I'm addressing that here and now. I wasn't just saying it for hype. I genuinely did think Islam got dropped. And honestly, it made for a really funny clip. So I'm happy about it too. But I also just want to say thank you guys for even commenting that. I know a lot of people maybe wouldn't have addressed it. A lot of people in this space would just, hide away from this type of dialogue. But I think it's really important that I'm honest with you guys when saying, I'm not a fighter. I don't get everything right every single time. And especially when I'm just really trying to enjoy, as you can see in the watch along, trying to enjoy the fights as a fan. And I'm not necessarily working. It's the first time I've done a watch along, and I'm going to keep doing them because I think people like them. I'm not necessarily as locked in as I would be, as if sometimes when I'm watching the cards on my own, writing notes for the episodes, right? And I think it's a different way of analyzing. And trust me, I love to watch the fights as analytically as possible, but sometimes there is space for enjoying fights completely as a fan. Now, I don't think necessarily I was doing either. If I'm being particularly honest, I think I was at some points very analytical in that video, and I had to cut a lot out. I mean, the video ended up being, I think, 21 minutes, 30 seconds. I recorded for the entire main card and the fight before that, the Peyton Talbot fight, but that didn't get included in the video. So, I was recording for 5 hours. It was difficult at that point. It was late, and maybe my eyes deceived me a little bit. But I just want to say thank you, EB North, for commenting that and also responding to my response. I'm happy that you're watching. Hopefully you're watching this episode, and welcome back. I also got a comment from DreamVoid7, which says, respect from Georgia. Nice reaction, boys. Rewatch first round of Merab versus Umar. Merab was dog walking him till Umar landed a good punch on Merab on his way out. End of the round. But in my opinion, it did not still round, and even one judge gave it to Merab. So DreamVoid7 thinks Merab, I believe, won the first round as well as the last three. So he had it 4-1 Merab. And I think that's a good segue, to be honest with you. Thank you for commenting that, by the way, because you're going to help me get into this next part of the episode. Thank you so much, DreamVoid7. I think this goes perfectly into the next segment I really wanted to talk about, which is that Umar versus Merab fight. Now, a lot of people, including myself, thought that Umar Nurmagomedov was going to win. But if you watched episode 17 of this very podcast, my predictions episode, where I went through every single fight, the film analysis, the breakdown about how exactly I thought these fights would go, I did say that Merab Dvalishvili had a much better chance than anybody was giving him credit for. It was only a few experts, I would say a few fighters, a few analysts who were really saying, I have no idea why the odds are this skewed. Why is Merab a 3-1 underdog when in reality, he has all the chance in the world of winning this fight? And that was what I was kind of saying. I said, I do think Umar has more paths. I said Umar Nurmagomedov has more paths to victory in this fight because he has a broader skill set, a better skill set in quotation marks, in terms of, his stand-up ability. He comes from a stand-up background. He's very clean striking. He comes from that Dagestani camp with Khabib, with Islam Makhachev, with Tagir, who's also on this card. They develop that wrestling, that grappling style that is so dominant, and they're so hard to take down. So you're thinking, well, Merab's whole game plan is to take people down. But then if you went back like I did and watched all of those Merab Dvalishvili fights, you understand that this guy's wrestling is on a different level. Not necessarily the first or the second takedown, but after the 49th takedown, there is nothing you can do to stop this guy. His cardio is on an absolute another level. Now, if you watched the watch-along reaction, you saw that I thought Umar Nurmagomedov was up 2 rounds. And we later found out that he already had a broken hand, I believe, in the first round. So he won another round with a broken hand. After that, Merab Dvalishvili just starts putting on the pressure. And you see me in the watch-along say, oh, he's starting to build. And if he keeps up the pressure, if he puts the gas tank on 100 right now, I think he can win this fight. But for me, when I see a lot of the reaction to this fight saying, well, nobody was saying this GOAT stuff about Merab before. And this is what this section is about. I know I'm jittering about a little bit here, but I think Merab Dvalishvili is the bantamweight greatest of all time in that division after this performance. And I'm going to explain to you why. A lot of people say, well, how can you say that? How can that now be the reality of the situation after this fight where he technically only won 3-2? Now, I understand if people are saying, if that's just their argument, if they're saying just the fact that it's a victory over Umar Nurmagomedov and now he's the GOAT. For me, he did something that I had never seen before inside of MMA, or at least not for a very long time, and at least something I can't remember in this moment, right? Which was when you are down 2 rounds to then have the confidence to come out in the 3rd round the knowledge. Merab always fights like he knows something we don't. And in this fight, he exemplified that because he comes out in the third round, starts putting the pace on Umar Nurmagomedov, starts winning the grappling exchanges, starts chain wrestling, starts shooting multiple takedowns, lands big right hands that sting Umar. And then you see him showboating. You see him already playing up to the crowd, already pointing at Umar, already raising his hands up in the air, already dismissing him. When he knows he's 2 rounds down. Now maybe like Dream Void 7 says, maybe Merab thinks it's 1-1. I doubt that. I seriously doubt that. And even then, when it's 1-1 against a guy who's such a big favorite in front of you, who's such a big mountain to climb because of the pedigree of his career, 18-0, the pedigree of his coach, his camp, you know this guy has insane grappling. You know it's going to be a tough fight. And for Merab to have so much confidence in himself to already be showboating in that third round, to then, snowball that into the fourth round where he's growing, dominating even more, tiring Umar Nurmagomedov out. I think it was in the fourth round that you do see Umar literally crouched on the floor at one point trying to take a breath. He's exhausted. And I said in the watch along, I think Umar's going to pass out. It was an incredible scene for me. And then obviously he finishes the fight with, more takedowns and more showboating. And you see in the watch along, my whole demeanor change and the people around me change. And you can hear them in the background, my friends. We could not believe what we were watching. We cannot believe the fact that Merab was able to take down somebody of this pedigree in terms of the grappling. You saw at the very start of the round, it was impossible to take Umar down. But the thing that differentiates Merab to any other fighter, perhaps on the planet, is his ability to go again and again and again and again. And more than anything, I believe it's just a mental tax, right? If anybody has done any sort of training, whether that's martial arts, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, Aikido, anything, right? I don't know. I just watched a Joe Rogan podcast clip on Aikido. That's why I'm referencing that. But even if you train basketball or football or American football, tennis, when you get tired and you're not used to that level of exhaustion, it's not just the physical part of it. It's your mental ability to push through it. And if you're not used to that level of exhaustion and you haven't been there before, you find out really quickly if you're able to deal with it or not. And I think Umar probably was, slightly diminished because of that right hand. It probably makes it insanely hard to defend takedowns because your grip strength is probably just gone. You're not able to stuff takedowns. You're not able to hold on to the key parts, to hold on to the wrist, control the wrist, stop the arms from locking together, things like that, right? You're not able to fight you're not able to break the hands or anything like that because your hand's broken. You've got no strength through that. I understand that. But we've never seen somebody from that elite, legacy-ridden Khabib Abdulmanap legacy camp get taken down like that. And that for me has nothing to do with Umar. I'm not trying to put Umar down here because for me, Umar won 2 rounds and Umar looked spectacular until Merab was able to surmount him with the pressure, able to pile it on and able to technically, in my opinion, win just the rest of the fight. So I don't want to take anything away from Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't think this takes anything away from him in terms of his future of being a champion. I think Umar is still going to be a champion in the future. Does he fight Merab again? I don't know. But all I need to say right now is I don't want now this to be some sort of tug of war between you think Merab is the GOAT only because he won Umar. No, he's not actually the GOAT. If you look at his resume, the people he's beaten, it's absolutely insane. Jose Aldo, Peter Yan, Sean O'Malley, Umar Nurmagomedov. I'm missing some people obviously right now in my head. But it's actually unbelievable what he's done. And I get it. Before this fight, a lot of people found Merab boring. A lot of people who weren't aficionados of the sport, who weren't, people who just absolutely impassioned and their entire life is MMA, to be honest with you. They weren't, the biggest fans of Merab. And no, I've always been a fan of Merab, and you can ask my friends about that. I've genuinely always had an appreciation for his game, appreciation for his character, his personality, and his story. But this fight for me is one of those fights that proves to a wider audience that grappling can be entertaining, just how you do it, how you approach it. And for Merab, I think he has become, in my opinion, one of the biggest superstars in the UFC. Just because it was such, for me at least, as a big fan of the sport, what a performance. I cannot understate it. And, a lot of the reason I feel so strongly about this performance and so strongly in my conviction that he is now the bantamweight greatest of all time is because it was Umar Nurmagomedov. When he beat Henry Cejudo, there was a lot of reasons you could say of this was an older Henry Cejudo. This was a Henry Cejudo who came in with an injury. This is a Henry Cejudo who had spent a couple of years outside the octagon, came back against Aljo, lost, and then was fighting Merab. You can say a lot of those types of things, correct? With Peter Yan, I'm sure there's another reason. With Jose Aldo, he wasn't in his prime. So, but to beat this is like a statement win. This is the staple win of Merab Dvalishvili's career so far. And now he also has the most takedowns in UFC history, surpassing George St. Pierre. So there's not a lot you can say to me. I know there's other people in that conversation, but I haven't seen a performance like that. And just the confidence, the bravado, the showboating to do so when you're losing the fight already and then to come back and actually win. It was spectacular. So for me, Merab is the greatest of all time in that division. Let me know what you think. Do you think that's a fair statement? Do you think I'm overreaching? Do you think I'm overreacting? And who do you think is the GOAT instead of him in the bantamweight division? But I'm excited to see what you guys say on that one. I'm going to have a little sip of water here as we get into the main event of UFC 311 and my reactions post my instant reactions. So, what I wanted to say about the main event last weekend was, first of all, huge props to both of those guys for accepting the fight. Obviously, Arman Tsarukyan goes out with the back injury. We covered that extensively. Thank you for the support on that video as well. So Islam accepts the fight with Renato Moicano. Renato Moicano steps up. Obviously, I think he got paid quite healthily. I think he said on his podcast, the Show Me the Money podcast, that he got paid over $950,000. So great for Renato as well for that opportunity, financially as well. So I spoke a little bit about how I thought Islam got dropped, and he didn't, to be fair. And if you watch my watch-along reaction, I thought Renato came out well. He looked very comfortable on the feet. That shoulder still looked unhealthy. I don't know if he's got a plate in there or if it's still broken. I don't know exactly how they've treated that right shoulder. It looks bad. It's since this Benoit Saint-Denis fight. But he looks good. He looks comfortable. He's throwing that leg kick, right? That low leg kick to Islam Makhachev, who's standing in a southpaw stance. And I said it on the watch along, as Renato's throwing that leg kick, it's just landing to the front of the shin. It's not landing to the outside of the calf, which is more damaging. So you can see that Renato has the right intention. He wants to throw that leg kick, maybe even just create some different variability in his striking, a different setup from the leg kick. But I noticed that. So he had good intention coming out, right? He threw the leg kick a couple of times. He was landing some good shots. He got into exchanges. He was confident in those exchanges. And then as soon as the fight hit the ground, Islam shoots him. I think it was for a double leg, turns the corner beautifully. I think Renato Moicano kind of stuffs it. Islam changes the direction again of the takedown, gets him down to the ground. And as soon as it went down to the ground, I just said, you know what, boys, it's over. It's over. And a part of me was thinking, Renato was probably training for a stand-up fight against Beneil, because Beneil's grappling is so good. And I actually did pick Beneil Dariush to beat Renato Moicano. Partly because of that ground game that Beneil has in his own right. So when it went to the ground with Islam Makhachev, I just said, it's over. You can look at the watch along. I said it instantly. And, it took, a little bit. And Renato was actually defending quite well. And then at one point, he gets some space. He creates some distance between him and Islam, kind of, for a second, pauses that top pressure. And as he tries to get up, he gives up his neck. Islam Makhachev, best ass choke in the UFC, snatches it up and gets the job done. Now, I'm first going to talk about Islam. What a great performance. I think that's the most title defenses in lightweight history now. Cements himself as probably the greatest lightweight of all time. It's either him or Khabib. Who do you think wins that fight? I don't know. For some reason, I still think Khabib, but that might just be nostalgia. Skill set wise, Islam Makhachev is obviously more well-rounded, much better striking, much better finishing ability on the feet. And has more title defenses, longer win streak. Not long win streak, but more fights in the UFC. probably. I'm just all over the place right now. But, it's up for debate, isn't it? So I'll let you guys decide that one as well. But what's next for Islam right now? For me, I'm interested pretty much in three things. Now, I would love to see Charles Oliveira get his shot at Islam Makhachev one more time. I think that was the fight that was destined to happen again before, Charles got a really bad cut over his right eye. Volkanovski steps in on short notice and gets head kicked. And I think Charles Oliveira has earned his way back to that shot with that win over Michael Chandler. And I do think that fight could go a little bit differently from the first one. I think the Charles Oliveira we saw in that fight, I just don't believe that was a fully healthy Charles Oliveira. The way he approached it, it didn't look right to me. And I have no basis for saying that really, other than Charles saying I was 10% of myself in that fight. That could have been referring to injury. That could have been referring to other things. I have no idea. But I would love to see that fight again. And obviously, as a Charles Oliveira fan, I would love to see him get another shot at the title. That's just honesty, right? That's what we do on this podcast. We are honest. We try to present our biases. I'm trying to let you know exactly how I'm thinking. And I want more MMA figures and analysts and fans and all of us to be a little bit more honest about where our opinions come from, right? So yeah, I'm a Charles Oliveira fan. I love Charles. So I do want him to get that title shot. Pure aesthetically speaking, or pure competitiveness, I would love to see the UFC allow Ilia Topuria go up and fight Islam Makhachev at 155. I would absolutely die to see that fight, because I think that fight presents big problems for Islam Makhachev. Ilia is very, very, very good on the feet. We know the power this guy has, the technique in the boxing, the intelligence to go to the body, to attack the legs, to use the wrestling, to use every single part of MMA. Why he's probably one of the greatest featherweights we've ever seen, probably why he's one of the biggest stars in the sport in a long time, representing both Spain and Georgia. You kind of get that narrative again of Georgia versus Dagestan like you just had with Umar and Merab. But I think also, can we see if Ilia can compete on the ground with with Islam Makhachev, sorry. Do we see that it's a stand-up fight then? And who wins in that round? Because I think that becomes very, very, very interesting. I think, I think Ilia definitely has the ability to beat Islam Makhachev. And I'll say it here. I do believe that if that fight were to happen, I'd have to think about it a little bit more. I'd have to watch some more film. But I do believe Ilia would win that fight. That's how good I think Ilia Topuria is. That's how much power I think he possesses in his hands. And he also has that Greco-Roman base. People like to think of him as just a slick boxer. Nah, he was a wrestler, bro. He started as a wrestler. So, he's a very, very interesting matchup for Islam Makhachev. And then the final option, I think, for Islam is to go up to 170. Go up to 170, fight Belal Muhammad, or, fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. If Shavkat Rakhmonov wins against Belal, I see that fight happening. I see Islam going up and fighting Shavkat. And I see Islam winning that fight, if I'm completely honest with you. But, that's what it is. I mean, he's got a lot of options now, and that's what he deserves as, probably the most established, most winningest lightweight champion in history. He deserves, after, the amount of title defenses he's had, to make some decisions about what he wants to do next and kind of have some pull in his next opponent. I think he'll go for Charles probably, and then go for either one of the other two. I think those are more side missions afterwards. But he did say, I'm not leaving this sport without a second belt. So probably his priority is to go up to 170. I don't know. It depends what the UFC allows him to do. It depends what the UFC's plans are for 170. I think it also depends if Belal Muhammad loses. And I think secretly in Islam Makhachev's mind, he believes that Belal Muhammad will lose against Shavkat. But I don't know. I think Belal probably wins that fight as well. So it's all dependent on a lot of things, and that's the sport of MMA, right? Everything shifts so quickly. One loss here can change the trajectory of four other fighters, So it's all a domino effect in this sport. For Renato Moicano, what does he do next? Well, for me, Renato, it was in a very interesting situation. So he didn't take a lot of damage in that fight. Anyway, he was supposed to fight Beneil Dariush, which I don't necessarily know if it was a number one contenders fight. I think probably for for Hinato, it probably was, and for Benilo, it wasn't one of those types of things. Or at least a number one contenders eliminator fight. So for me, Hinato doesn't lose much because he didn't take that much damage. He can get back in there very quickly. I think the UFC are going to push him because he's a big star. And I think the opportunity for him is to fight the winner of Gaethje or Dan Hooker. I think the winner of that doesn't necessarily put himself in a title shot picture straight away. But maybe they do, you know, especially with Gaethje and Hooker. They've got such a big name value that probably they could get themselves in that conversation after a good win, especially if it's a spectacular performance. Also, you have to remember Max Holloway is moving up to lightweight. He's probably in the mix if he gets a good win against Charles Oliveira. I know Charles Oliveira said if Islam's waiting too long, I'll fight Max Holloway. Or Hinato could just rebook that fight with Benil. So I think there's a lot of options for Hinato, but I do believe he's probably one, maximum 2 fights away from another title shot if he can get those wins. And, you know, for somebody who would take such a dangerous fight, you know, a mountain to climb fight on such short notice, I think the UFC will reward him with a little bit of not favorable matchmaking, but, you know, a path to the title if he can get, you know, victories that are going to be very, very hard fought. So very, very interesting. He's a great guy, Renato Moicano, very outspoken, very well spoken, very intelligent, obviously very well read, especially about economics, the Austrian School of Economics, as he calls it, I believe. He's read a lot of their stuff, and you know, he's giving, you know, good advice, and you know, sometimes I don't agree with everything he says, but you don't have to agree with everything everyone says. But for the most part, I think he's just a great thing for this sport. I think he's an absolute star. He's entertaining. I love watching him fight. Good fight style, and of course, very, very gracious in defeat as well. I don't know if anybody watched his video on his channel after the fight against Islam Makhachev, but he was very honest about it, very, very clear, and has a great mentality for getting back in there and climbing the mountain again. Now I'm going to move to the Jiri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill fight. I mean, what an absolute war that was. That was insane. And probably for me, fight of the night, if I'm honest. I thought it was so competitive in terms of the actual exchanges. Now, obviously, Jiri, in the end, was doing the more damaging shots. The power Jiri Prochazka has is just not normal. But he throws himself into the fire like I haven't seen before, maybe ever in light heavyweight history. You know, these guys are huge, especially someone like Jamal Hill's got that knockout power. I still thought about it, you know. I was very happy with myself in terms of my analysis before the fight, because I'll never get everything right. MMA is a crazy sport, but I always want to be as accurate as possible in my analysis about how fighters approach fights, about the techniques they use, about the range they like to engage in, about the way they enter the pocket or the way they exit the pocket, whether they cut angles on the exit, whether they push forward in a straight line or back up in a straight line, where are their hands placement, how good is their 1-2, are they getting their hands back to the face, all of these types of things. And I felt like my analysis for this fight was accurate, not just because I got it correct, but because of the way both fighters approach this combat here. You know, Jiri Prochazka, obviously, if you look at that watch along, these are my reactions to the big shots.
Yo, Jamal Hill's a dog.
Oh! Save him from himself, Rev. Oh! How is he up?
So I was going crazy. You have to understand, I was going absolutely mental when I was watching that fight. But for me, my biggest respect goes to Jamal Hill. You know, a lot of people like to clown Jamal Hill. They like to say, oh, like, he can't take a loss well, all of this stuff. It's not true. It's just not true. And he's an absolute dog, an absolute warrior, a fighter's fighter. The ability to stay in there, to keep going, to keep pushing after being hurt a lot of times. You know, he was still trying to get up. You know, it was the ref that had to stop the fight, not Jamal. I think he'll be happy with the fact that he was able to go off on his shield. So for me, Jamal Hill always had my respect and doesn't need my respect, but you know, absolute warrior. You know, he's a real fighter. And I hope kind of a lot of it subsides. It's such fake hate. You know, you don't have to, just because you love Alex Poatan Pereira, doesn't mean you have to hate on Jamal Hill. That's not how this works. And that's where the maturation of this community needs to grow up. And, you know, sometimes I do understand the mindset. I don't appreciate the mindset, but I understand the mindset, because the way, for example, I view football, my club is Arsenal. I love watching Arsenal. I watch every single game. I keep up with everything, all the news, all of that good stuff. And I love watching the games. Am I the biggest actual general football fan? I know, no. Do I watch some other games here and there? Yes. But, I prefer, I watch the sport for my team. And I guess a lot of people bring that mentality into MMA and say, I'm watching the sport for this fighter and this fighter and this fighter, and everybody else outside of them, F them, screw them. Which you do need a little bit of that. You do need a little bit of that because it creates those storylines. It creates that energy. It creates that hype, that venom in the sport that sometimes you do need. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit different. And that's why I started this podcast. Because this sport, MMA and combat sports in general, whether that's boxing or Muay Thai or kickboxing or, wrestling or jiu-jitsu or anything that requires one-to-one combat, I think requires a different viewing perspective. It requires a more holistic fandom. It requires support for an understanding that the sport is different, has different consequences, so that anybody, especially at the elite level, who's getting in there and risking it all for your enjoyment, deserves appreciation and deserves some sort of respect and, I would say fandom, like some sort of support and fandom and appreciation, to the point at which it doesn't have to be, I like Pereira, so I hate Ilia Adesanya, or I like Pereira, so I hate Jamal Hill. No, I'm probably one of the biggest Israel Adesanya fans I know. I've got him knocking out Pereira right here on my wall. But I love both of those guys. I think they're both excellent. I think they're both brilliant. I think they're probably two of the best fights I've ever seen inside the sport, right? So I've become a different type of sports fan through combat sports, and especially MMA and the UFC, because I can sit down and watch any fight, any time, in any sport, any promotion, and receive some sort of enjoyment from it. Because when you're a fan of the sport, instead of just specific fighters or in a different sport, a specific team, your experience changes and your understanding and maturation of not only the sport, but obviously of your appreciation for your favorite fighters as well goes up, and their opponents, and you just enjoy. And it also opens so many gateways to learn more about the sport, and your curiosity is spiked through that, in my opinion. Anywho, back to before I went off on that tangent or being all sentimental, I just want to say respect to Jamal Hill. And for Jiri, I don't know what's next. He's obviously lost twice to Alex Pereira. That second one was a little bit different, just in terms of it being short notice. I know it was short notice for both of them, but Jiri did look a little bit more disciplined. Now, in the end, did he win the fight through his kind of typical throwing himself into the fire, making it a brawl, just being an absolute killer? Yes. But he looked a little bit more technical for me. Those left hands, his ability to slip punches, it was very good. His head movement was very good. His footwork in unison with that head movement to then throw the counter shots looked a little bit better, in my opinion. And he did look a little bit more disciplined. I think those are the small micro adjustments that will give him a better chance if he ever gets that trilogy fight against Alex Pereira. Until then, I don't know exactly what's next. Let me know, guys, what you think is next for Jiri Prochazka. For Jamal Hill, I think I don't even want to talk about what's next for him. I know there's more fights for him in his future, but he went to an absolute war, heart of a champ. So he just needs to take some time off, enjoy some time with his family. I know he's had some injuries. He had the Achilles tear before the Alex Pereira fight, which caused him to relinquish his belt. He then had some knee problems in that training camp against Carlos Ulberg, which caused him to pull out. And then it was Anthony Smith versus Carlos Ulberg. And then Carlos Ulberg pulled out of that. And then Roman Dolidze stepped in. So, as I said before, one thing can change everything in this sport. That changed probably the trajectory of Anthony Smith's career. I'm not saying he would have beat Carlos Ulberg by any means, but I'm saying that, who knows? Everything can change in a split second. So yeah, I don't know what's next for either of those guys, but I'm praying and hoping the best for Jamal Hill, just to recover quickly and, just keep his head high, and I'm sure he will be. But yeah, so the question now is, what else is next for the people on the card? For me, Jailton Almeida looked very, very good in his performance against Spivac. He was getting dominated a little bit at the start of the round and on the ground, which was quite surprising to me, and I didn't really expect that. Spivac looked very, very good in my opinion there, but obviously able to get the knockout win at the end of the first round. Kind of drop Spivac, disorientate him, get on the ground and pound and TKO him. I think Spivac actually reported like a broken jaw. So praying the best for him as well. For Jalton, I think there's probably some big fights in the heavyweight division for him. He's a guy that obviously had that loss to, who had that loss to Curtis Blades. That was the point where you think, okay, can he get over the mountaintop here? Can he become one of those top, UFC heavyweights and really challenge for a title and make a run for the title? But I'm looking at the rankings right now. Curtis Blades, who's at number 4, he's beaten him. Almeida currently sits at number 6. Should he fight Cyril Gane? Could he fight Volkov, who just came off a loss against Cyril Gane? And obviously we're expecting a huge fight between Tom Aspinall and John Jones. So the heavyweight division is a bit of a cluster F right now. So we're going to have to figure that out, I'm sure. But, great performance. And, Jalton Almeida looked very, very good. Now, I do need to talk about the fight that opened the main card, which was Kevin Holland versus Reinier de Ridder. I picked Kevin Holland just because I thought we were going to see the Kevin Holland that had come out with a new fire. And listen, you saw the UFC release their disclosed payments to each fighter, and Kevin Holland's getting paid very well for these fights, right? And he fights so often that, he's doing very well for himself. Has he adopted a mentality where he's saying, I'm fighting to get this great money? You know what I'm saying? I'm getting good money. I'm getting paid a lot and often. Is that why he's fighting? Is that why he took this fight? Is that why he approached the fight in the way he did? I'm not saying that. Now, if you watch the watch along, when Reinier de Ridder goes for the takedown and very, very early in the round and gets on top of Kevin Holland, I thought there were spaces for Kevin Holland to, get his feet to the hips, try and push off and get up. And I didn't see that intentionality from him. Is it because he came back too quick from the tearing of the rib cartilage against Roman Dolidze? I don't know. Or, and this is what I actually thought about a bit more, is it the fact that he's moved back up to middleweight? And if you look at they release, what the fighters weigh on fight night as opposed to what they weighed in at. Reinier de Ridder was like 212 pounds on fight night. So heavier than a light heavyweight fighting a middleweight. And I think Kevin Holland was probably about 190. So he gave up 20 pounds inside the octagon. Was it just the fact that he doesn't have the actual physical size to compete with these guys? I've always thought Kevin Holland was a good at welterweight at 170. I think he had a lot of success down there. I'd be more interested, and I'm sure there is some footage out there, an interview question about why he moved back up to middleweight. But, for Kevin Holland, I still think he's a good fighter. I think he still has potential, and I'd love to see him go back down to welterweight and make another run there. Reinier de Ridder, great win for him. Now 2-0 in the UFC, and a big name, 2 big names really in GM3 and Kevin Holland. Good on his resume so far, and I'm very excited to see what he does and if he can compete against the most elite guys in the division. But that's going to wrap it up for me in terms of today's episode. I know it's a bit of a short one, but I do want to say again, thank you so much for the support and the content. I think the last 3 videos I've released, episode 17 of the podcast, the breaking news about Arman Sarukian and the watch along have all received over 130 views, which is just fantastic. I can't ask for more than that. I'm so grateful to everybody who's watching, who's clicking on these videos. I'm really trying my best to get better in this game. And I hope you guys can see that with the editing, with the watch alongs, or with my analysis. So today it's going to be a little bit more of a conversational one. I don't want to do too much editing. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more. And yes, watch out for the watch alongs. They're going to be coming back. Watch out for the giveaway for the 50 subscribers that we've reached. I'm going to be doing some nice stuff for you guys. Some nice practical giveaways for you, if you see what I'm talking about. But yeah, honestly, so grateful for everything that's going on at the moment. And yeah, keep commenting, keep talking, keep reaching out to me in the comments. I'll always respond if I can, whether that's on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, wherever I'm posting. So just, yeah, please watch out for everything that I do. It can't be done without you guys. I'm trying to build a community here, and I love the dialogue that we've had so far. Thank you for all the people that featured in this week's podcast in terms of the comments. And yeah, I will see you next time for episode 19 of the Backseat Fighter when we get back to some fight week stuff. Let's go.